Hey there, and welcome to Hot Seat. And we are here to explore the reasons of why. What's the why? What's the purpose? What drives business owners to do what they do? If it's what you're looking for, to get motivated, well, we look forward to sharing this episode with you. I'm your host, Kelvin Holliday, and I am enjoying the fact that we can explore people's why and motivate others. So stay tuned for this exciting new episode. 15 minutes, fast paced. Let's do it. Mate, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here, buddy. And mate, we've only known each other a very short period of time, but when we connected up last time and we were introduced by Jackson, I think, wasn't it? Was that Jackson Milan, mate, another legend, a legend in his own lifetime, carpenter extraordinary. I keep on calling him. He's a wealth mentor. But mate, pleasure to have you here on a hot seat. And so I'd just like to start off, mate. Tell us a bit of Oliver or the Ollie story, mate. Where's life brought you so far? Where you actually live, etc.
Yeah. So I actually grew up in Hawke's Bay in New Zealand, so sort of east side of New Zealand. That was pretty sunny, pretty nice, and generally I was pretty active from a young age and quite competitive. I think it was first or last in that space, and I just got myself in every sport in that space, and noticed that it was very much that all or nothing attitude that started pretty quick. Diving into all those sports. And I think the one thing that I took away from that was, the one way of training was not the same for each sport. And there were these little nuances with all these different things that really made a big difference. Safe to say I didn't spend as much time in school as I did on the sports field. But as I sort of grew into, I actually went to Victoria Uni and dove into commerce and that sort of space first before diving into personal training. But I think the biggest thing I took away from that was as soon as we got into a work environment, we started to notice how much more, just like how much brain capacity drains energy, right? When you're needing that decision making, you're managing some level of stress, there's something else going on. It really impacts your recovery. And you go from someone that's bouncing around doing all the sports to, I no longer have the motivation, I don't have the energy, I don't have the recovery to do these things. And I actually moved into, alongside doing some startups and all the things that you say yes to, I actually got started in that personal training space. And very quickly sort of built quite a well-known brand around the exercise aspect of just mastering movement. And as I started to work with more business professionals and executives, I started to notice that made very little sense to focus on, right? Because they were walking through the door with just so much stress and inflammation that training hard in the gym really wasn't getting them the results they were truly after. So diving into that space and just being curious as to why and how I could make this better. It became a 100% training conversation and very sort of military, do this and work hard to, let's have more of a conversation on nutrition. Let's have more of a conversation around lifestyle design. Let's start to look at how you're talking to yourself so that we can do this more often. It's not 100% or 0%. We can actually build up from 5% to 10% and really start to make this a habit. So that was really the transition of both me and the company. And alongside that sort of transition of my business pursuit, I was very much, it had to be 100% for training. It had to be the perfect workout, and I'd have to have 2 or 3 meals before I worked out, it was all in place. And I had my world shock pretty well when I had a pretty big motorcycle crash on the racetrack 2 or 3 years ago now. And I was going about 200 Ks down the main straights. I think it's about 120, 140 miles per hour. And wow. Had full brake failure. So just gone from all brakes one quarter to 0 brakes the next quarter. And, you're sort of tracking along there pretty quick. You don't have a lot of time to think. And I woke up on the other side of the fence, about that far away from the road, sort of 30 centimeters away from the road. I'd flown 30 meters away from the track, Supermaning over the whole thing and tore a whole thing, most of the muscles off my shoulder, dislocated the shoulder, broke a whole lot of things, but my spine and pelvis and all that stuff was intact. And there's a guy that died in hospital a year earlier doing the exact same thing I'd done. So I was pretty lucky to walk away from that one, knowing that obviously having some level of fitness and muscle mass certainly protected me to some degree. But going back that first workout of that first week after that, I was lifting the 2 kilo dumbbell and struggling, and that just a whole different perspective on why I was doing what I was doing. I wasn't forcing myself into that. And I think I'd spent 20 years just going through the momentum of like, I have to push this body hard because it needs to get better. And it came from a place of not necessarily self-compassion. And I think when we move into the space of long-term health and wellness, it really needs to be something we do for us, not to us. And I think that was a really big shift for me. So just understanding what 50% really felt like. And if I could just go in and go to the gym for 10 minutes and just contract a couple muscles, or go for a walk down the road with my sling, and even getting to the point of running with a sling, I think was just, I can do something, and it can be just, it needs to be anything, to just simply move forward and start to feel better. And just realize that came from a level of self-compassion. Now, that aligned with a lot of the mentors I was around. John Berardi did a fantastic presentation, who he owned for a very long time, one of the biggest nutrition certification companies in the world. And he started a presentation with, we're in the failure business. And that just, it changed my entire company at the time to really build habit change into what we're doing, right? Because we were world-class in the exercise, we're world-class in nutrition and gut health. And then it was this habit design in the middle. They know the things they need to do. Why are they not doing them? And it was just building this sequence of, how can we fail less often? And rather than focusing on the perfect workout, the perfect day, how can we just build up our non-negotiables? How can we build that baseline? And that's really where we're focused on right now. I think we're pushing certain aspects of our business pretty hard, but at the same time, I'm aware that, hey, I'm in the exact same spot. What are my non-negotiables? I've got my 6 or 7 that I want to get in for the week, and I need to make sure I'm hitting at least 3 or 4 daily. What are those, and how can I make sure I protect that space? Because it's the stuff that when we're reactive, we just push to the side. But if we can take the time to notice what's important, what's urgent, and what's just there and can be pushed for another 5 years, but eventually it's going to be an issue, how can we be a little more proactive with what that looks like? So that's really how we've built our stuff. And what I'm really about is just making sure I never want to feel 50% energy. I always want to be at the top of my game. And I know those steps that need to be in place in order to do it. And to enjoy it, because I think you can force your body into that space. But if you're doing it from a place of lack or a place of self-hate, I feel that the mental chatter is the biggest thing. And I'm sure, Cal, you've seen in your world too, the monetary success and the other things that go on. If that mental chatter is not where it needs to be, nothing really starts to feel good anyway. And I think that energy, that platform of being your own best friend, is a huge part of that.
Look, mate, resonates so much. So a lot of people who know me, who are listening on here, they seem to go through a bit of a transformation in health myself. I got into a very, very unhealthy position. Basically got into that. As you said, that self, stressed out. Put myself last and put my business first. A lot of business owners. And I love what you were just saying. Like, it's just about what is those things? What's that 1 or 2 things you can do? What can you do rather than what can't you do? And put yourself in that growth mindset rather than that negative, fixed mindset space is such an important part. So, mate, you've actually made a bit of a change at the moment. So, you Meta project. What's the new branding? What's that about? What's the driver behind the change?
Yeah, so we went from Meta project to Body Reset, and we're in that whole process this week. We used Meta for a long time, and the whole meaning behind that was more expansive, more integrative, more self-aware, right? It was all about this integration of the 3 aspects, mind, body, and digestive, that we were trying to understand a bit more in bringing that together. Now, as you may have seen in the last couple of years, metaverse is becoming a bigger thing. Meta with the whole Facebook integration has become huge. And I'm a pretty competitive guy, but that's not a competition I think I can beat. So we tried to transition away from Meta simply from the brand recognition. Meta project doesn't describe health in some sense, and it means a lot to our clients, but I think it feels a little bit too vague on the outside. So we moved over to Body Reset. It was a certain program that we'd run that I think articulated the name of what we do really well. And I was terrified to do so, but I presented it to our clients last night and they loved it. So we've bought domains, we've done all the stuff, and we'll start building that out this week. So Body Reset is our new name, just focusing on, ultimately, we are doing a full reset of the body and looking at all the aspects of getting your body back on your side. So that's a name that we're transitioning over to.
Beautiful. So a little bit deeper on Ollie. So you've motorsports. What other sort of sports have you been involved in, and are you still doing any sort of sports now that you're back? Maybe you're a little bit rehabbed, or?
Yeah. It's been a big journey, man. It's been about nearly 2 years since that crash, and I've got most function back of that shoulder, but it was a proper nudge that did not help. I've had about 9, maybe 10 dislocations at this point, so it's not a happy shoulder because I dislocated it in rugby, I dislocated it snowboarding, I dislocated it doing everything. So the range of sports I've done, range from polo, so on the back of a horse, going through that was a fantastic sport. Going through the motorbike racing, the triathlons, the rugby. I've done the full bodybuilding shows, getting down to 3% body fat and still 100 kilos on stage. That was pushing the body to the exact, the absolute extreme, and kind of everything in between. So it's very much just this love of the game and understanding that every sport looks simpler on the outside than it really is, and the nuance of that just makes the absolute difference. I think motorcycle riding is one of those, and polo probably too, is the two that really shine through as being the devil's in the details, right? Because how those guys are able to get a bike around the corner, they're balancing the state of that bike and they're going 300 k's an hour. It's ridiculous. So right now there's a little bit of running, a little bit of mountain biking, and really just overall strength. I think there's certainly a pursuit of business that's the main focus, but it's the how my fitness and sporting stuff allows me to feel better on a day-to-day basis rather than the other way around. And I've certainly been both ways, right? Like I'm working to make sure that I'm funding my sport pursuits, but now it's very much the other way around. And I think most people have probably gone through that transition. But I think that background of knowledge and just knowing that my body's been through those different types. I had a presentation with 50 odd business owners this morning, and a lot of them had been in a space with that sort of sporting background. And I think there's a lot of overlaps between business and health, and being able to apply those certain aspects of just nailing the non-negotiables on a day-to-day basis, I think is where that platform really came from.
Yeah, cool. And personally, like what do you? It sounds like you've got a very busy life between running and doing all your different things. What are the personal things that you like to do?
I keep it really simple, mate. I'm very much a component of doing the boring work and just doing it daily. I think with the spaces I'm in with, I'm a big one of, if I'm overthinking, I'm writing. If I'm underthinking, I'm reading, or I'm listening, right? And I spend at least in the phase of life I'm in now, I'm still probably spending about 8 to 9 hours a day working and in this sort of space. I work out or do some sort of sweat session in the morning, and there's a bit of time on the weekends to just, we've bought this lovely house down here in Wellington and sort of building that up, and a couple of sort of track days in the weekend. But we tend to not do too much crazy in regards to a huge amount of moving around. It's very just building a really good brand and enjoying the people I'm connecting with.
Yeah, so it's very, very much focused on and some respects living out that dream of helping other people to go through that. And I know what it's like. As I said, I went through a transformation. I lost 90 kilos over a 2-year period, and when you do that, it was quite. It took a lot of this, and then COVID hit, and I found a couple of those kilos back again. So I might be giving you a ring very shortly to try and get my headspace back right. But the reality is that I think so often, I'm just talking as a business owner here, we get so absorbed in the business. Like even this morning, like I was up very early, started very early, and I didn't go for my morning walk. And I'm sitting here, my feet are tapping on the floor. I'm going, I didn't do that. And if once you get out of the habit, or if you're in a habit and something turns you around, there was just those little things. So I'm just wondering, like when you talk about trying to get the mindset going right and getting people to make that start and to start breaking their poor habits into good habits. You got any tips and everything for some people to help them to work through that?
Yeah, so many. I think the biggest one you've just said with, okay, it's time to get back in shape. I need to get my head right? I think that's a really cool space to work with, of how can I get my mind back in the right space? My body will follow, because it's very much mental and physical is going to work together. Going through the bodybuilding phase, I dropped up to 20 kilos in a 3 to 4 month time period, getting ready for shows. And you physically, things are hard, but it's a mental game through and through, right? Because it's not a 1 hour in the gym problem. It's a 24 hours you're consciously thinking about it and focusing on it and making those tweaks and adjustments. And I think there's were good and bad things that I did in that time to make sure that that was a positive experience. I think when you're 3% body fat, you look great, but you feel terrible. So I think that's one to work with. But looking at habits and making change work long time, I still use some of my more successful bodybuilding preps as a real learning as to how to drop body fat effectively, right? Because I did some shows where they were 6 months long. I was forcing my body to change. I was working out twice a day, like just everything, right? And my most recent show was about 3 or 4 months. I got into great shape really quickly, and it was actually pretty easy, right? And it simply follows a 5-step process that we use with all of our clients, right? So we're looking at that stress aspect first. It's never going to be a minimizing of stress entirely, but I think it's understanding that stress is not a level, it's a threshold, and being able to build your threshold up, I think, makes a huge difference. Moving into sleep and understanding that there's a huge component, not just quantity, but quality of sleep. There's a breathing aspect, there's a movement aspect. There's so many things there that can improve your sleep quality. And now we're moving into that toxicity space, right? There's a fantastic stat that's being reinforced quite a few times around if you smoke, you increase inflammation in your body by 2 to 4 hours. If you have deep fried food, you increase it by up to 24. Right. So understanding the amount of toxic load that comes through, not just from deep fried food, but things like the vegetable oils that most people think are healthy, but are rancid before they even get in their trolley. That sort of stuff makes a huge difference to be able to drop body fat long term. So that's layer number one. Now we can start having a conversation of the quality of the foods you're eating, some timing aspects we can look at, and then an improvement of exercise, right? Most people can drop body fat in a 2-month time period running, but long-term, you just become more efficient at running and less effective at burning body fat. With weight training, it's something that over time you get more effective at contracting muscles and you get more effective at burning body fat. So I think making the best use of the time you have in your day and working through those 5 steps started and stemmed from a lot of my, okay, if we're going to go to the exact extremes of both muscle mass and body fat, how do I do this? And then how do we apply this to our real world setting? And the biggest thing, and I'll come back to your initial question, Cal, is like, how do we make habits last long term? Don't go from 0 to 100 overnight, right? What's that first baseline? It might be getting to 2 liters or even 3 liters of water a day. Awesome. Stick to that for 2 weeks. How can I make sure I nail my morning walk and get to that for 2 weeks? And what that allows for is that when we have a bad day, we have a big project on, we have a kid that's sick, we only break down to one baseline. We don't just plummet to the floor. And when we build those things up slowly and we just work on that new habit, how can we make it easier? How can we make it more consistent? I think that just becomes a much easier way to make it conscious first and then unconscious through a habit, rather than consciously working really hard to keep that discipline every day with all of the things. Something's going to fall through.
Yeah. And look, I read a book, and I don't know if you've seen it, The One Thing, and it's just that broke a cycle for me, because a lot of the time when people talk about the one thing, they talk about one thing, I want to get healthy. Now it's too big. Yeah. It's too big a thing. It is the one thing, but the one thing, as you just said, is break that down into something that you can actually make a change with. You can't change your health overnight.
Yeah. What's the one thing that by doing so makes everything easier and irrelevant? Isn't that it? Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And as you said, so water is like, wow, if you get that 2 to 3 liters of water in a day, that toxicity in your body, the whole bit, that can be just that one itself. Getting out and having a walk,
Yeah.
2 extremely good ones. Yeah.
Yeah. And the big reason that's so important, Cal, is that it becomes the one thing that you can remove rather than the 10 things that you think need to add, right? When we look at your food intake, we're telling you to eat less, eat less, eat less. We're not. We're just talking about how about you count colors, not calories, and how do you make sure you build a bit more nutrition back into your day? If you want to have a splurge, great, have more food, but if you don't have the deep fried food, you've just drastically changed how your body operates for the next 7 days, right? So there's simple little nuances of quality and removing the one thing that's a problem rather than trying to add in the fancy new 10 things that are just confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. Olly, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you in here, mate. And I know you've got a mind that's absolutely full of information that we'll be able to catch into. And I'm sure we'll actually have you back on one of our masterclasses or on the Unleashed program a little bit later on as well, mate. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll actually catch up with you again pretty soon, buddy.
I appreciate it so much, Cal. That was so good to be on, and hopefully articulated some of those things in my head that we can expand on further.
Mate, we will definitely do that. So it's been an absolute pleasure, bud. You take care.
Thanks for joining us here at Hot Seat. It's been an amazing, amazing event. It is a place where you can actually enjoy and be inspired by the why of others, the drive of the purpose and the passion. Please like and share this podcast with as many people as you can to inspire them to make a difference in this world. Have an awesome day. Unleash.